Hello, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick, and today we're doing an author interview with author M.G. Mason. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that if you enjoy this kind of content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more because it's your guys' feedback that helps me know what's working, what's not working, and what's frankly unenjoyable. So, without further ado, with that said, on to the interview. Enjoy. My guest today is a prolific Cornish author of fantasy, horror, and science fiction. I'd also call him an author of weird. That is, salmon weird. It's one of his books. He's also the author of The Weight of Reason, Dead Heat, Deadlock, Heron Folk, and Other Stories, and, well, a number of other stories. When I said he was prolific, I kind of meant it. He enjoys mixing genres, and with a speculative writer, you don't really know what that means. That you don't really know what you're going to get, and I mean that in the best way. Throw in the fact that he's got a degree in archaeology and he's a major sci-fi nerd, he's going to surprise you with his wow. His website features a handful of serials that he works on and some works of flash fiction. As if that's not enough, when he's not world building and exploring the gladiatorial coliseums, he's writing freelance for business and entrepreneurial articles, or he runs a professional photography blog. It's my pleasure to introduce M.G. Mason to the channel. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Ian. Thank you for having me. Sort of seems like we've set this up maybe even last year, so this has been a long time coming, and we're finally here.
Yeah, it is, and it's always fun for me to actually get to hear the voices of the people that I've been talking to on Twitter. It makes you a real person and not just a picture.
Yeah, I know I've put a few videos on the Instagram channel, so I think that's only something I started doing like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I realized just how much from Southwest England I sound. And a lot of people didn't know you sounded like that.
Is there anything else that you would like to add in the description of yourself that I missed?
You did a better job of describing me than I would, to be honest. Oh yes, that's one I have. No, nothing.
So then, your upcoming book is called, I'm gonna mess it up now. It's out of my head already. Phobetor's Children. It gets stuck and then it gets stuck.
I'm not entirely certain how to pronounce myself. I've been going with Phobetor's Children on the same sort of logic that the Greek name Phoebe. It's not Phoebe, so I'm thinking it must be Phobetor's Children.
Phobetor's Children. So I learned from listening, so I might have to hear you say it a couple of times. But I was wondering, so what is this book about?
This is the short version is this is about a group of gladiators, retired gladiators, very, very famous, very rich, who go on a secret mission for Emperor Vespasian with promises of riches and even more glory, to go beyond the border of the Roman Empire to investigate a fort or a secret fort that they had positioned there to keep an eye on the tribes. It's gone quiet. It's not reported into the border town. It's not reported into the imperial family, and they are deeply worried. At the very beginning of the book, the obvious question is asked: why are you sending 6 of us? Why are you sending gladiators? Why don't you send a legion, 4,800 men? And the answer comes back: well, you can move quickly. There's far less logistics. There's far less paperwork. You can be there before anybody finds out. And so, yes, they head beyond the border into Germany, and they find a fort completely in ruins, hardly any dead bodies. And they cannot understand how the German tribes have wrought this much damage on the fort itself. There is also a mine, which comes later into the story, and it's a psychological horror. The creatures or what is responsible for the destruction of the fort is a creature not of this world, and well, it uses psychological horror. It's a psychological horror set during the Roman Empire with sci-fi elements.
It's a really interesting combination of genres, in my opinion. Where did the title come from?
The title is actually quite a recent thing. I started writing this 7 years ago. For 5 years of its life, it was just called Romans versus Aliens. It was not
Okay.
going to have that title. So towards the end of the book, I was thinking, I cannot keep this title as Romans versus aliens. You've got a snakes on a plane type thing, cowboys versus aliens type thing.
Hmm.
So I looked into the mythology of Greece and Rome and looked up what is do they have? I mean, the Romans had gods and demigods, goddesses for virtually everything. There
Hmm.
was bound to be a god or a demigod for nightmares. And I came across this figure or this demigod called Phobetor. Although there's some academic discussion on his nature, but I decided to go with the theory that Phobetor is the demigod of night terrors, and decided to take it from there. So the creatures became Phobetor's children, and that was about 2 years ago, 5 years into the book's life.
You know how much more that makes me love the title? Like knowing that? Where did you get the inspiration for the story, and what made you decide that you needed to pursue it, right now and over the last 7 or 8 years?
Mm. Most of my ideas come as a single scene in my head. I get an idea, and it starts almost from a snippet, like a two-second clip. This one, they didn't actually start life as gladiators. In my head at the beginning, they were actually medieval knights returning to Germania returning to the Holy Roman Empire, sorry, after a crusade. But I didn't know that much about the Holy Roman Empire. It's not an area or a period that I know much about. But what I do know about is Rome. I know about Roman social structure. I know about the Roman military. And so these four men quickly became six men, and then six men became five men and one woman, and they became retired gladiators with all the baggage that goes with that. Certainly for from the lower class, there's a
Hmm.
lot of personal baggage in there. I knew it wasn't going to be a standard alien invasion novel right from the beginning. From the start, I knew there was going to have some psychological horror elements, and then I started thinking about what sort of baggage could these people have. They're fighters, they're professionals. They come often, in some cases, from the very bottom of society. What sort of baggage could they carry with them? And the story started developed from there.
Okay. Good starting place. How did you do the research for this book?
I've got a few remaining academic texts from when I was at university. So I started with a book called Gladiators and Caesars, which looks into. In fact, I'll get you a title so we can put this when the video goes up. Gladiators and Caesars. It's about the social structure and how gladiators were actually seen by Roman society. How they were seen almost as their sports stars of the day. I also had a lot of information in my head about the Roman military, so I studied it in quite great depth. And also, one of the modules I did as part of my archaeology degree was Roman inscriptions. So I knew all about tombs. I know all about how gladiators were celebrated, how even right down to normal people, how patrician and well-to-do men would have celebrated or marked their wives. So this gave me a good background in understanding the social strata as well.
Okay. Sounds like you did a lot of research, which for
Yeah,
me, it really showed through in the way that the characters interacted and they had a social structure between the different gladiators when I was reading it too, and that
yeah.
really showed to me. It was one of the stronger parts and one of my favorite things to see that different leveling between people.
Right, I'm so glad that came through. So much detail went into that. I'm glad it came through.
Without any spoilers, do you have a favorite part?
Oh, that's a good question. Do I have a favorite part? I think the world building in part one, because you'll remember it's divided into four parts.
Mhm.
Most of it is part one and part two is where I do most of the world building, certainly the building for Rome. And part two, certainly, as they see Rome's influence gradually trickle off as they get to Germany. I like actually some chapters that you've not read yet because this is brand new material that I've added recently. I quite like the character development as their relationships form during the journey and references to things that have happened during the walk. Um, yeah, of the new material, I think I much prefer the stuff that I've added later on for the character development.
I'm so excited to read that. Have you ever written anything, whether it's in this project or in previous projects, that you might be a little embarrassed or afraid of your family reading, or you had a little fear of reading?
Yes, it's this one. Um, well, as you know from being a beta reader, it has a lot of intense stuff.
Okay.
Uh, there is, as you know, there is a very very serious sexual assault. There is also a consensual sex scene between a man and wife. I think I'm far less embarrassed about them reading the sex as I am about the rape scene.
Hmm.
It's I really sort of went down into the dark depths. I'd never written anything like it before. I'd written one sex scene in a book that I've never published, mostly because it wasn't complete, and I'd never written anything like that before. And all of a sudden, this one's got three or four and quite very open discussions of sexual activity. I have warned them that if they decide they want to read it, it's not like the book I released last year. Completely the opposite end of the scale.
Well, when you can die at any time and you're covered in blood, it's like, where's the shame in talking about a little sex?
Yeah.
What's the hardest thing that you have ever written? I'm gonna kind of guess that it is in Phobetor's Children.
Yes, it is. In fact, the six chapters that specifically deal with each of the psychotic episodes that the characters go through. After writing each chapter, I think I took days off before I wrote the next one because I found them so emotionally draining. I would just close the laptop, sit on the chair, and I would just feel all the energy had gone from me. I need a break from this for a few days. So it's definitely for Beater's Children by a long shot.
Okay. Do you do anything before you write those scenes, the really intense, draining scenes, other than take some days off afterwards in preparation for writing those scenes?
I I've made notes. I think I've got some written notes hanging around somewhere, just describing what I want to do. So I'm mentally preparing myself for having to write those scenes eventually. So I mentally prepare myself, and then I took a break afterwards.
Okay. What's the most helpful piece of advice that you've ever received as an author? Or one of them, because we can all get like bombarded
Yeah,
with advice.
I think just write your story. I think, as you know from Twitter, there are a lot of people on there who they seem to come up with rules. Do this, don't do that. You shouldn't write this. You shouldn't write that. You should write this. You should write that. I think just write your story because the most important element is passion.
Mm.
As long as you've got passion for your story, you're doing the world a service, and you'll be doing yourself a disservice if you don't. I can't even remember who told me that, but I think just being told just to go with it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
What's the best compliment you've ever received on some of your writing?
The best compliment. Somebody recently compared my other book, Salmon Weird, to Agatha Christie.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she said the ending was very Agatha Christie. She didn't see it coming, and it was set up to be like a classical crime thriller. And oh yeah, I was really pleased with that.
So you got some weird and some science fiction and some mystery.
Yes, it is. That's you cannot get two very different books than Phobetor's Children or Salmon Weird. People who read both, and a couple of people have actually pre-ordered Phobetor's Children who would love Salmon Weird. I think they're going to be surprised at just how different it is.
Hope they like it. So, what is your writing process like? We're all kind of different. What is yours like?
I'm a pantser. I make
Okay.
that along for all the positives and negatives that comes with that writing style. I go until I reach a dead end, and if I reach a dead end and there's no way forward, I tend to backtrack. I might cut out a scene or a chapter. I sometimes take to writing handwritten notes if I feel that would actually work. Again, I've got several notebooks full of handwritten notes. And I use spider diagrams if possible. If I'm stuck at a crossroads and I'm not quite sure where to go with a certain idea. In fact, I'm going to do it with the sequel to Salmon Weird because I'm stuck in a conundrum right now on where to go with a certain point. I'll make a spider diagram and I'll look. This route will take me up here. This route will take me the story in this direction. So handwritten notes, pantsing, but occasionally even room for a bit of planning too.
That's really smart with the diagrams to go, okay, if I do this, decision. It's kind of like with a board game or like an RPG or
Yeah,
D&D, like if I do this, then this is going to
yeah.
very smart. So one of my mentors in the past once told me that we write about things that we are obsessed about because really we're spending years of our lives with a lot of these things. Do you see anything in your writing that's a reoccurring theme or a character or an idea, one of your obsessions?
History.
That is a
Yeah.
fair obsession. There's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it, yeah. I mean, I've got a Roman character in Sam and Weird, although the Romans aren't actually my favorite period. It's definitely medieval Europe. It's history, it's character growth. As I look back to some of the earlier work that I've written, it's almost characters in a difficult situation, overcoming their struggles.
Okay.
In fact, the character in Phobetor's Children, Nero, who appears to be everybody's favorite, as I'm going through it, I'm realizing he's very much like an assassin in a book I wrote about 20 years ago. So I probably transplanted the character from one book to another. If I ever revisit that story, I have to make sure he's different enough from Nero.
I mean, do you? We've seen other writers that kind of just youth characters. This is one of my favorite things. Authors come from so many different backgrounds and get inspired by so many different things. Sometimes it's the trauma, sometimes they were just bored, sometimes it's a friend just told them they had good ideas and they should write. What is your writer's story? Your origin story?
My origin story. I've been writing since I was even able to pick up a pen. I think that would be my mother's assessment. As soon as I was able to even write out words, I was writing stories. I've always had a vivid imagination, so I think I was always going to be a writer, even though there have been periods in my life, often years or decades, where I've not actually done it. Especially at university, you're writing a lot of academic stuff. You tend not to write a lot of fiction. I think it's just part of who I am. And as I sort of reflect, I think a lot of Phobetor's Children is very much reflecting some of my own life experiences. I would say the person or the character who reflects some of my life experiences the most will actually be Livia, the only woman. You've got certain class expectations, and this begins very much at school. You're a working class man. You've got certain standards to maintain in terms of working, caring for a family, that sort of thing. It's very, very different for Livia. In the story, she's a high class woman, and she's expected to act in a way that reflects her class. So I think breaking the standards expected of sort of, I suppose, the role that you're born into. I think that's my origin story: breaking the expectations and doing what I want.
Love that. Okay, so book recommendation time. What's one of your favorite books and why do you like it?
I love anything written by Neil Gaiman. Although it's not my favorite book, I love worlds within worlds type books that he writes, like American Gods. I first read American Gods when I was on a trip across Canada. I was on a Greyhound bus and I devoured it in 2 days.
Oh wow,
And it left.
That is a thick beast too.
It is, yes. And well, we had not much else to do aside from stare at fields of Canadian wheat and crops. I love the worlds within worlds. So I would recommend anyone starting to get involved in fantasy certainly to read a Neil Gaiman. I love his Dark Materials. I love the alternate universe versions of stories as well. Or what could be alternate universe stories. I really, really love those. What else would I recommend? I would also recommend a writer called Lindsay Davis. She was actually one of my inspirations for writing Sam and Weird. She writes, again with Emperor Vespasian, she writes crime novels set during the 1st century Roman Empire. The books are incredibly funny, they're incredibly educational and informative, but they're great crime thrillers as well. So those would be the 3 books I'd recommend: American Gods by Neil Gaiman, His Dark Materials, Philip Pullman, and the Falco series by Lindsay Davis.
I have never heard of her before, but I feel like I should go and look at her because it sounds really interesting.
They're great summer reads. I've often sat on a Greek beach reading them and just laughing away and getting funny looks from people. What's he laughing at?
So, what do you love the most about the writing process?
I love the world building. It's creating the whole new characters, just the entire setting. The process of discovery, because I'm a pantser. I make I go along. It's the getting the new ideas and the world building and just the whole creation aspect of it.
Okay, and then what's your least favorite part?
I'm supposed to say editing, but I don't really like it. I just like hitting the brick wall and having to go back. Nobody really likes having to cut out entire chapters, especially if you've become emotionally attached to it. But liking a chapter and having to cut it out for the sake of the story. Murdering the Darlings, I'd say. Murdering the Darlings is the bit that I don't like because it means having to sacrifice something that I feel was actually progress.
Okay. What is something that you've learned while publishing your novels that would make life easier for other authors who are about to go the same way?
Sell yourself. You've got to sell yourself. It's a very different world, especially when you're self-publishing. You are the brand. I think it's something that a lot of people talk about, and it's something that I've perhaps learned too late. But as I've got engaged in Twitter and certainly on Instagram and posting the way that I do and putting myself out there, it's really started to really started to pay off in the last few months. July was my best month for book sales.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you very much. It's certainly very encouraging during this very, very difficult year that we're experiencing right now. But I would say start now, even if your book is a year away. Start now, put yourself out there, build your brand, put your face out there, put your smiley faces all over Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, and build your audience. Start soon, start early.
Great advice, and that's one of the reasons why I started this kind of interview thing. Is I wanted to give authors more of a chance to get themselves out there because it is really hard for indie authors. And everything costs money too.
Yeah.
So when you start, oh, I already asked. No, yeah. When you start writing, do you plan for one book or a series? Do you know when a book is going to be longer than one book?
I tend to plan for one book. Salmon Weird was very, very different. When I wrote the first chapter, I already know it's going to go to at least 3 books. In fact, I wrote the first chapter, I wrote the last chapter, and then I added a note at the end saying we'll return to Salmon Weird in book 2 and book 3. And now I've actually got 6 books, 6 book ideas. I'm only halfway through writing book 2. And it's for the most part, Phobetor's Children is going to be a standalone. I did post on Instagram a little while ago, I think, about having a general idea for a follow-up, but I think I've managed to now work in some ideas that ties up, I hope, all the loose ends, that it won't actually need a follow-up novella or novel for that matter. I planned for one book, but if I get more book ideas, I start writing them, but I won't write for the sake of it. If it's got a bit more life in it, then I'll go for it.
That's what I like. It tells me that authors are really thinking about the characters in the book in the moment rather than just making money, and it usually makes a richer story to me.
Mm-hmm.
So what's harder? What's the hardest part of the book for you to work on? The beginning, the middle, or the end?
The ending. Usually the ending. I had, I think roughly until 2 years ago, I had, when I came up with the title for Phobetor's Children, I didn't know what the ending was going to be. I didn't know who was going to survive. I didn't know how many. In fact, I only decided how many survivors there were going to be in February this year when I started to write chapters out. Endings are harder. Although once again, Sam Weird breaks that routine, because I wrote the first chapter and then I wrote the last chapter. But in general terms, it's the ending I really struggle to come up with. Sometimes I'll get towards the end of a book and I'll leave it for weeks, sometimes even months, while I'm still thinking up and it.
I'll see. Salmon Weird is just living up to its name by being weird.
Yeah.
Are there any trends or tropes that you'd like to see swing back into popularity that have kind of fallen away right now?
Ooh, trends or tropes. I can't think of any. I know some tropes that I'd rather see die.
Oh, which ones?
The love triangle.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Most of the time they just feel forced.
Yes, they do, and it's often. I've often felt that it's a choice between a character who has no personality but all the looks, and a character who has everything going for them.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think there are tropes that I like. I like the misunderstanding trope when, or the hot person who's come into the life of the love interest ends up being their sibling. I mean, it's overused, but I don't mind it so much. But as for any coming back, no, I can't think of any.
Okay. What does write what you know mean to you?
Oh, this
We
this has
all
been,
hear it everywhere.
yeah. It's been the subject of so many furious debates on Twitter. I think some people interpret it to mean you should only write from your own experiences. You shouldn't write outside of your own gender, race, or even your own country or anything like that. I think for me, it means just break those stereotypes. Write from what you know, but if you've got to research to bring in some alternative experiences, then do so. Don't be afraid to research. So that would be an addendum, I think, rather than a change.
I think that's a good way to read the sentence.
Mhm.
Is there anything that will make you put a book down before you finish it?
I have done plenty of times. Bad writing. If I'm not engaged with the characters, if I can't stand the characters, or I really don't care what happens to them, I would put it down. Uh, and having an archaeology degree, I'd put down a book if I felt it was full of historical errors.
Mm.
If there was if there was bad research, or even some very basic errors. I read a book some years ago about that was set during ancient Egypt, and the book referred to Osiris reading a list of the characters' sins from the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. Well, you could do a cursory research on Wikipedia to know that was actually a book of prayers. It wouldn't have listed the person's sins or the things that they had done wrong in life. So something like that, even the very, very basics, I forgive the big things, because sometimes academia is not particularly accessible. But everybody has access to Wikipedia. We all have access to Google Scholar, and there is no harm in research. In fact, it's lazy not to.
Mhm. Good point. What are some big things that are in your life or big parts of your life, hobbies that are outside of writing?
Photography, as you know, I do love landscape and nature photography particularly. I've only had a camera 2 years. It's something that I've usually just stuck with, like a little pocket camera or my phone. I initially bought a camera to get myself out, because I write for a living, so I am inside 5, 6, 7 days a week, sometimes not going out. But despite being an introvert, I'm actually quite. I like to get outside. I like to go and explore. So photography, landscapes, especially in nature. For a while, I was doing archery, but that proved to be quite an expensive hobby. I do like to go climbing, although it's been a couple of years since I've been climbing a wall, and running. Although again, it's been about a year or so, I think, since I've actually been out for a run. I need to take it up again once the autumn comes. I'm very much looking forward to getting out and hitting those streets.
Do you travel a lot for photography?
You don't need to travel so far when you're living in Cornwall. We've got some incredible landscapes, incredible coastal landscapes, lots of nature. I took some photos on our last foreign holiday to Malta. Southwest England is really a great place to go taking photos. I don't need to go very far to take some incredible landscapes and sunsets and some ocean landscapes.
That's always helpful. How do you relax and reward yourself for a job well done? Finishing a book, any of that?
I'm a foodie. I might go out for a meal. We might get a takeaway, or I might bake a cake. I love cooking, particularly baking. Especially in the autumn. Autumn is my season for cooking. I'll spend all day making a Christmas pudding. Traditional British puddings like spotted dick, jam roly poly. Usually with food or a small glass of whiskey. Alcohol, like a small glass of gin, maybe, or whiskey, vodka. So yeah, I think some indulgent food or a little bit of alcohol.
I'm kind of the same way. Not the alcohol, but I'm like, I just want a nice little treat and then not do anything.
Yeah,
Do you
definitely
have
know that.
do you have any advice for writers that are just starting out? Maybe they haven't even put down their first words, or they're struggling with their first idea.
Yes, don't be scared. You will come up against so many people telling you this and that rule, a long list of rules, what you should and shouldn't do. Just go with it. Just write with your heart, not your head, and let your head do the editing.
I don't know about anybody else, but I really like this MG Mason guy. He's got a lot of smart things to say.
Yeah.
And so if people want to hear more from you, if they want to find you, where can they go to find you online?
They can find me at Instagram. That's my main site. It's Matt Wright Specfic, but there's an underscore between each of the words. MATT underscore Wright underscore spec underscore fic. I want to make that shorter. Now I realise I want to make that shorter and a bit easier on the eye. You'll find me at MG Mason Creative on Twitter. Those are my two main hangouts, really. I spend most of my time on Instagram and on Twitter. You can find me on my website, mgm-cs.com, although that's more of my professional writing outlet. I do have a fiction page. Goodreads, the usual places you'll find writers, but Twitter and Instagram are the main places you'll find me.
And those will all be linked in the description down below, so if anybody wants to check him out, and you should, you don't have to remember or transcribe those addresses. Do you respond if people want to contact you? Have any questions for you?
Yes, of course, by all means. Look me up on Twitter or Instagram. Anybody has any writing-related questions or anything about my books, anything, just, find me a message.
Get it. He's a good source, and he's an interesting guy. So,
thank you.
Finally, can we get a little teaser for Phobetor's Children? Can we get the opening line?
You can indeed. Let me just drag this up. The warm glow of summer touched the buildings of Rome, spreading golden wings across a landscape recovering from darkness. Light hit the Forum and the new Flavian Amphitheatre, still several years away from completion. It touched the Flavian Palace, sending the final shards of night into slumber. That was the first paragraph, not the first line. But...
That's okay. Like, I was pulled in. I had the mood. I was ready to keep going.
Very different from the one you read as well. The first chapter that I wrote that you read has actually been completely ditched.
Oh, wow.
It's gone. So we go straight to the palace.
Well, that's a great opening. I want to see what's happening in this place. And it really sets a mood. So you all can pick up a copy of Phobetor's Children on Monday, October 5th. But you can get your ebook now from pre-order with a price of $3, or about $3, or about £2. Personally, I'm always on team paperback, but you can't get the paperback until it's released. But
it's unfortunate.
I highly suggest the paperback of this because the cover is beautiful and will make an excellent addition to your bookshelf. If you can't wait to get reading Matt's work until October 5th, he's got a series named Salmon Weird, as mentioned previously, and other readings online. A link to his website will be in the description below, and you can find him on all the social media. So thank you so much for being here, Matt, and I look forward to the release.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. Been a great interview.
Dear Madam Astra, that's me. We regret to inform you that on August 1st, your employer, Agatha Jane Benedict, owner of the Benedict estate, peacefully passed away in her sleep. Oh, that's so sad. Wait. Let me try that again. Oh my goodness. That's so sad. Yeah, I think I'm ready. With millions of dollars on the line and the opportunity for your every need to be taken care of for life. Tell me, is there anything more valuable than that? I didn't think so. Dead End Drive is a dark comedy novel that makes 3 promises. 1, an illustrious estate in Louisiana. 2, an opulent dinner affair for all in attendance. And 3, and most importantly of all, lots and lots of competitive murder. So if you're looking for a cozy book to settle in with for the spooky season, I've only got one question for you. Will I see you at the Will reading?